Hello, I'm Richard Davison and welcome to Dressage for Jumping. I'm joined by John and Robert Whittaker, and in this programme we're hoping to show you a system of training your horse on the flat to help your jumping. John, what role do you think dressage has got to play in jumping today?
Well, I don't think people take the dressage seriously enough. Show jumping, both cross country and jumping, has got far more technical over the last few years, and I think it's just essential to get your dressage correct.
Okay, well we've got lots of work to get through, so let's get started. Whenever you school your horse, in order to achieve maximum improvement, it's important that you have a very clear plan to your training session. Our sessions are divided into 5 phases. To demonstrate these phases, I'm riding a 10-year-old Hanoverian gelding, Hiscox Karachi. Now the first phase is the suppling phase, and this basically involves stretching. Now just like any top athlete, before they play their sport, they stretch their muscles in order to avoid injury and also in order to help build up the muscles and keep them active. Also, only a supple horse really goes with enough energy and impulsion. When the horses first come out of the stable, we walk them to allow the freedom of them to just loosen up gradually. Now this horse is relaxing his head and neck, he's nodding his head and neck down, but it's not on a strong contact, he's just on a loose contact. And at this stage, if something flew out of the bushes, if a bird flew out of the bushes and the horse wanted to lift his head and look at it, that's perfectly okay. But on the other side, I don't allow him to walk around with his head and neck upside down, as that damages the horse's back muscles. When we start to trot, stay on a large circle and start in rising trot to help the horse's back muscles swing. Keep your hands a nice contact evenly down each rein, and your hands either side of the withers. And now I'm looking for the stretch of the head and neck that I had in the walk. That's a nice stretch. The horse isn't pulling down and he's staying active in his hind legs. Now, as much as stretching his back that way, rather like the athlete might touch his toes, I'm also beginning to flex and bend him to the inside. As I bend him to the right, the muscles here on the left side are being stretched. So this is like the athlete doing a sideways stretch. And I can encourage him to exaggerate that stretch to the side to help with that lateral stretching. And now I'm going to repeat that on the other rein, as it's very important that you work the horse and stretch the horse equally on both reins in order to achieve overall suppleness. Now when I flex the horse to the inside, it's important that I keep my weight central in the saddle and don't use too much inside hand. Equally, if I do it without enough care and pull on the inside rein, I can put his quarters out like this, and he's no longer going straight now, tracking straight. So be careful that you keep the horse tracking straight. If you bend his neck too much and let go with your outside rein like that, his shoulder will drift away and you won't stay on the circle. So that's what we don't want, and this is what we do want. Rider sitting in the middle of the horse flexing gently to the inside, and the rider controlling the stretch. I'm going to open my fingers now, and I'd like the horse to stretch centimetre by centimetre down. You can see I haven't forced my hands down, I've still got a small contact, And now he's fully stretching over his back to the inside and to the other side. And that is the stretching and suppling phase completed. The second phase of our training session is to ensure a good, quick and immediate response to our leg. As you know, when you're jumping, it's most important that you can move the horse to the fence in a forward manner so that he arrives at the right place and with enough energy. During the stretching phase, you may have noticed that I was not continually using my legs. My legs were just hanging down in a relaxed fashion. They weren't gripping and they weren't strong. They were just hanging down and making contact with the horse in the natural place. That varies depending on your length of leg and the shape of the horse. I'm going to make some halt, walk, halt transitions now, and I'm going to ensure that this horse moves immediately forward from one very small nudge of the leg and a very light touch at that. So, sit straight, small nudge and release. And when I say release, I don't mean that you've got to take your legs off the horse. I mean your legs just remain gently in contact. We've got 3 points of contact. I've mentioned the rein contact during the stretching, and we've got the leg contact, and then we've got the contact with your seat in the saddle, which varies a little bit depending on types of fences you're jumping and the type of horse you're riding. So, a series of transitions now where I move from halt to walk and test out and improve his response to the leg. So halt, just with a small signal of the fingers, small nudge of the legs, and he walks on. Although I'm wearing spurs, the spurs are not in contact with the horse's sides, and that's very important. They're there for me to just give a very refined leg aid and a backup leg aid. For this work, I'm just using the inside part of my leg. Halt, nudge, and walk. Pat when he responds well. And the other thing is to be very careful that you don't feel you have to use the heel of your boot. So many people draw their heels up like that. This upsets the whole balance of your seat. Allow your legs to hang down and a nudge and relax. Now the other thing is, especially when you're walking, it's very easy to get into the habit of nagging your horse along. Perhaps you're not really thinking of concentrating on the horse's walk, you're thinking about your course, or you're thinking about the competition, and you can easily get into this habit, if you look at my legs now, where I'm niggling and nagging the horse to keep going. Now this is where we need a discipline to leave your legs still. The horse does not need your legs to keep him moving. He can move perfectly well on his own. So legs hanging down and just a nudge and he should go into trot. Now a few trot, walk, trot transitions to just check that response. One little nudge and relax. Good. And once again, nudge and relax. When I get on somebody's horse that is a bit dull to the leg, what I do is halt the horse, take my legs off the side. I'm going to exaggerate that so you can see that. Counter 2, and then give a little sharp kick, like that, and relax the legs on. And I do this very deliberately, probably 10 or a dozen times. Hold, legs relax, legs off, 1, 2, kick. And remember, I never kick the horse with a spur, only with the inside part of the leg. And this is only an exercise to be used on a horse that's allowed to become dull and numb to the leg. Leg off, well, and then you could see the natural progression. The horse uses his intelligence. When he feels my leg actually relaxing and coming off, he knows that a little kick is going to come, so he actually doesn't wait for the kick, he goes forward on his own. So, take my legs off, Little kick there. There must be a gap between taking your legs off and this little nudge. And we'll see this time, leg off. And there you see, I never had to go through with actually giving the nudge. And that's the best way to just freshen up a horse that's allowed to become a little bit insensitive. But it's really our responsibility as riders to make sure that we don't over-nag and grip with the legs just to keep a horse going. Now basically, a half halt is a rebalancing exercise and a reactivating or re-energizing exercise. And it must give those two qualities to the horse. We teach that by going on a large square. I'll do it in trot. And as I come to the corner, I sit up, can go into walk, turn around the corner, short nudge with my legs, sit up, walk, turn the corner, turn my body to encourage the horse to turn. And then all I do is cut out the number of walk steps till eventually I can just sit up, collect the horse, supple the horse, and then go forward coming out of the corner. So, coming towards this next corner, I'm going to sit up, collect a little bit, turn, and now ride forward. And the going forward out of the corner is very important because we train the horse through his mind and through association. So rather like teaching a dog to sit, it's repetition and reward, the same happens here. Eventually the horse starts to collect on his own and to re-energize himself there on his own. And it isn't me having to do this, it's the repetition of the exercise. So then we've got the half halt. I can do that on the circle now. And when I do this on the circle, what I'm trying to achieve is that as I rebalance the horse and slightly decrease the pace, his hind legs keep trotting well underneath. So let's try that. Take the body upright and now forward again to re-energize. I'm going to do it again. Slow down, but hind legs underneath and forward. This time when I do it, you might like to concentrate on the hind legs and make sure that there's no slowing down of the hind legs. Because what a half halt is not, it is not a stop and go exercise. So it is not this. And then forward. Show you that again, because when I do it like that, I block the hind legs, use the hands, and now I go, and I've lost the contact. That sort of half halt actually takes away the engagement of the hind legs that you need for jumping on takeoff instead of adding to it. So it means you arrive at your fence with less hind leg underneath the horse to give him the spring. So I can do exactly that in the canter, forward. Just check that he goes forward, sit up to bring him back. I can ride my square exercise forward. At first, when you do this exercise, it helps if you actually use the one end of the school, so you've actually got the corner of the kicking boards. Okay, and this horse is handling that well, so we can give him another stretch. As a reward and to keep his muscles supple. All right, so now we're ready for our fourth phase of the training session, which is to develop the new exercises that you haven't yet touched upon, which are going to help the horse jump better and improve him in competition. We've got our horse suppled up and we've got him responsive, so he's now absolutely ready to go. Now, it may be that you're intending on working through a jumping exercise or a grid or something like that, or it may be that you were intending on improving the horse in the dressage. Today, my plan with this horse is to work through some counter-canter exercises which will help strengthen the horse's hind legs, rebalance him, allow him to get straighter, and most importantly, help him stay obedient and listening to me. Whatever your plan is for that, working through that phase, it's essential that you do everything in a progressive and logical manner. Just as when you start to jump in the warm-up ring, you don't start with a great big oxer. You start with a small fence, perhaps a cross pole, and you gradually work up. Exactly the same thing applies to when you're schooling in dressage. You always start with the easy exercises and gradually make them more difficult. Now, I've already done some trot canter transitions, and now I'm going to get the horse ready to go directly from walk into canter. So I'm just preparing the walk. You could see I gave him a little nudge there with the inside leg to just activate the hind leg, putting the canter aids on and then straight into canter. Now, I've based most of my work for the stretching and the warming up on the big circle or the square. Now I'm ready to use the whole arena. Forward coming out of the corners, collect and supple going in and forward. Remember, I've got to stretch the hind leg forward underneath the horse all the time. So, collect a little bit, and the first counter-canter exercise I'm going to do is a loop, which comes 5 meters in. And this is the counter-canter bit. I'm in right canter, and I'm going to turn left there towards that corner. Now, even with training jumping riders, I think it's a very good idea to always have the dressage markers set out, because I think it helps you to ride accurately and know exactly where you're placing the horse. I want to take him back exactly at the letter H on a diagonal line. Counter-canter is not a sideways exercise, so it's important that the line is one continuous curve and the horse doesn't go crooked on that line. Good. Now this time at F, I'm going to make a half 10-meter circle and go back to the track halfway down. I've got a letter there to make sure that I go exactly back there. I'm going to keep him in right canter. Make sure he bends a little bit to the right, right leg on the girth, left leg behind. And should he start to lose the canter, I can just energize the horse, little nudge of the leg. If you watch my left leg there, can just nudge a bit, and in the meantime keep him through a nice contact, nice and supple. Make sure I sit straight in the saddle, and I also need to make sure that on the corners I don't push his quarters to the right, to the outside. So now I'm going to do it on a large circle, and as I go away from you, you should be able to see that the horse through his leg position is straight and not with his quarters to the right or his shoulders falling in to the left. Good. I'm going to collect him and walk. Now, the final phase of that is to make sure that he can strike off immediately into counter-canter. And for this purpose, the best way of testing and teaching the horse that is to wait until you come out of the second corner, make a very shallow loop, rather like the one I've been making but not so deep. So then bend him to the right, make sure your shoulders turn to the right, leg on, and ask him to canter. And then as the horse progresses, you can make that loop shallower and shallower till in fact he can strike off directly into canter, counter canter on the straight line. So let's just check that out now. You'll notice before every downward transition, I just collect the horse a little bit with his hind legs underneath. So prepare him, little flexion to the right, my body turned a bit to the right, and that's good. Now, you can gradually make that more and more difficult so the horse can strike off into the counter canter at any point. One of the most difficult places is in the middle of the short side here. And then he does it very straight and very well. Now there are many times in jumping that you have to ride what we call a dog's leg or a crooked line, and we don't always want the horse throwing in a flying change because he doesn't actually know the direction that we're really going to go, and so you need to be able to keep him in whichever canter you want. So for instance, if I'm coming round this fence here like that, he should be able to stay in that canter without offering me a flying change. I'm going to just run through that work with the left leg leading. Again, I have to start with the initial exercises, but I don't need to repeat them too many times on this rein. So the loop, and during this part in the loop, rebalance your horse when he gets a little bit long and on the forehand. Take his weight back like you did for the half halt, hind legs underneath him. Now the half circle. Always train yourself to ride really accurately, as you'll find it helps a lot with your jumping. On the flat, it's far too easy to just swan around the place, not really riding your corners well and not really riding to a particular marker. And then it's another ball game when you have to start riding to the middle of a fence and being accurate. And now we check that he can strike off there. Good. This work is very important preliminary work for later on when we teach the horse flying change. And now the last test is to strike off directly to counter canter in the middle of the short side, which he's done very well. Give him a little pat. And you can see the different leg positions. I'm in left canter, my right leg is back, left leg on the girth. What we don't want to do when we do counter canter is let your right leg, your outside leg, fall forward like mine is now. Keep it back there. Needn't be strong, but don't let it fall forward there. Otherwise, the horse can easily lose his counter canter. Equally, don't take this left leg back, otherwise he might make a flying change. Keep it on the girth like that. Good. So, that's the work that I wanted to cover with this horse today. The fifth and final stage of our training session is the cooling down. Now this is most important because the harder horse has used his muscles, the more important it is that he does not go back to his stable with the muscles cramped, because he'll be stiff and sore the next day. So the cooling down really involves stretches very similar to the first phase, the suppling up phase. So I'm going to finish him on the circle, rising trot with the horse stretching to the bit. If he lifts his head like he did there, you don't have to shorten your reins, just wait a few moments, and you've got to have this feeling that the horse is stretching, not on the forehand. If you look at his hind legs now, you'll see, oh, it's a little bit too much leg that I used there, which shows how responsive the horse is. But if you look at his hind legs when he's stretching, they're still active and they're still underneath him. Also look at his mouth. You'll see that we finished the training session with a nice wet mouth, just enough saliva, and the feeling that if I use my left wrist like that, the horse gently chews the bit and acknowledges the signals of my wrists, of my fingers. Try that on the right circle. The hands are not forced down. When you stretch the horse, don't feel that you have to push your hands down there like that, forcing his head down. Don't need to do that if you work the horse correctly with the stretches, and you have to develop a feeling for the stretches, just like a physiotherapist does when they're working on a human. They have to feel where the tightnesses are. You have to do the same thing when you're riding your horse. Remember, it's not just the stretch over the back, the stretching like that, it's also the stretching to the inside. And then we end up with a flexible and supple horse whose muscles are in a healthy state, ready for us to go and jump some decent fences.
Right, this is a young horse. It's the first time I've sat on him. I'm just going to give him a test drive and see how he handles. See what happens. Ooh. Ooh. Ooh.
Okay, John, how do you find him?
Yeah, actually it feels very good. Before the fence is very nice. He's very controllable. He jumps the fence very nice. Makes a nice shape and he feels good. Just after the fence, he's a little bit stiff in his neck and a little bit strong after the fence.
Yeah.
That's what I find. You know, but the jump is.
All right.
The jump's very good.
So he needs a little bit of work to soften him up between the fences.
That's right. Yes.
Right. I've got some ideas. I'll just go and get a hat.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, when it comes to softening the horse up in between the fences, I've got a few exercises which I can suggest. The first one is to teach your horse leg yielding. And this is an exercise where you move the horse forwards and sideways, and you teach the horse to soften to your leg. So the going sideways is one part of it, and we start by turning down the centre line and moving the horse, in this case, to my left, and I'm using my right leg to move the horse forwards and sideways. But as I do it, I'm feeling what the horse's muscles across the ribs are doing as I use my leg, and I'm trying to get a nice softening of those muscles as he goes sideways. Repeat that in rising trot. Down the centre line. You can see that he started already to stiffen his neck a bit when he saw the fences. Now when I use my right leg, if you watch it carefully, you'll find I'm not digging it into him. I'm just using it very carefully and releasing it again. And you can see that while I was doing that, sometimes his neck was relaxed and sometimes it was stiff. So I can move him on to another variation of that exercise, which is leg yielding on a circle. And I start with that by riding a small circle, wait for his neck to get nice and soft, and then I'm going to move him out sideways to a larger circle, using the same leg signals to move him sideways. Repeat that again towards you, and when I do that, I want his neck to soften like it did then. Now, not only does this help the horse to become soft, but it also helps you to be able to use the corners and move the horse into the corners, so that if the ring is a bit confined on space, you can really use the whole space you've got and approach the fences in the best way. The second exercise I've got to teach this horse to soften is to improve his transitions, especially his downward transitions, trot to walk or trot to halt. Let's just test those out. Now if I go into halt now, he's quite strong and stiff in the hand and he's lifted his head up, and now he's moved backwards off the bit. And that's what's happening when he's jumping. So I've got to improve the way he does those. What I'm going to do is to be more gradual, stay in rising trot, shorten the steps, keep the rein contact, keep my leg on to stop him moving backwards, and wait for him to soften to the hand. It's very important that we have the horse into the rein contact, not light because the horse is behind the contact, but equally not stiff and set in the neck. So let's just run through a series of transitions, and you can do this with horses of all standards, providing you do it correctly. Carefully reduce the rising trot, keep your rein contact. When he lifts his head up because he's looking at something, just keep your rein contact, wait for him to soften and to yield to your hand. Oh. Oh. A little bit of leg if he wants to go back. Oh. Oh. In this case, it's quite a test for him because he wants to look up over the fields. So that's better. Now he's softening his neck. And I'm going to choose a different place to do that. And this is what you have to think about when you're schooling your horse, is the psychological effect it has on your horse's mind. So I'm going to try it now. Oh, that's better. Now if you watch him chew the bit, he's just gently chewing the bit, just beginning to soften, and I've just kept the rein contact. I'm waiting for him to soften to my hand. That's better, like that. Give him a little pat when he does it. And I can try that in the canter. Again, I'm not going to do it here where the horse is looking towards the stables. I'm going to wait till I come towards the boards, collect, and then carefully hold and this time is already soft in my hands. I can give and retake, and I've got a much softer horse. Now I can try that without actually making the halt. I can move the canter on a bit. I can sit up and wait for him to yield. There he is there. When he yields to the rein contact in the neck, I can move forward again. It's a very fine line between having the horse into the contact, so he takes the hand forward, but not stiffening, and yet not dropping the bit and being behind the bit. The million-dollar question that every jumping rider wants to know the answer. How do you see a stride? How do you see that perfect stride?
Well, Richard, some people just are natural and they can see a stride from miles away, and some people can't and they have to work at it. You know, when I was young, we used to practice a lot, and my parents used to put a piece of paper on the ground, which is the right place to take off. And every day we used to practice trying to get that pony's feet on that piece of paper, and that was a good way to practice.
Well, should we try now?
Yeah. Roughly the place to take off's about two paces away, about here. That's roughly the same size as the fence. As the fence gets bigger, you stand back a bit more. If you've got an oxer, you get a bit closer. So anyway, roughly, that's about the right place to take off.
So we're putting that the same height as this fence away.
Yeah, about there.
Okay, and that's where
So
to
that's
jump
where,
upright.
Robert, that's where you got to try and get your horse's feet.
Now, did you do
take
this
off.
exercise with your children when they were young?
Yeah, I did all the time. This is it's a really good way to practice.
And what sort of canter do you want when you're coming towards this fence?
Well, a nice, bouncy, collected. Well, that was terrible, really, wasn't it? I mean,
Well, let's give it another go. So basically, the front feet were here, weren't they?
yeah.
All right, let's rate that so we can see it. So that was too far off.
That was miles too far off. First one was too close.
Too close, the first one.
Right,
Second
Robert,
one.
try and aim for the paper. Can you see it?
I've got an idea, John. Did Robert used to be able to do this very well?
Yeah.
Well, you know, as children grow up. Robert, how about if I replace the paper with a £20 note? Let's see if that works.
What happens
There
if
we
he
go.
hits it then? Can he keep it if he hits it?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a bit of incentive, isn't it, really?
Yeah. Well, that was
Right.
lucky. That was lucky
It was
for
much
me.
better.
It was closer. That was closer. That was there.
Yeah, that was much better. Once more.
So we've got to be on that line there, really, haven't we? Yep.
Go to an ox then after. Right.
Yeah. Oh, well, he did get the right spot. What are we going to do about the £20? I think what we've got to do, we've got the right spot, but not the fence down. How about if we move on to an oxer,
Yeah.
and if you can get the right spot and jump the fence, you can keep the money. Now, what do you do about the distance?
With
Can you-
ox, you just need to be a little bit closer. Just slightly closer. Basically, if you get too close, you catch the front pole. If you stand too far back, you get the back pole. So it's
Starts to get more
you have
important.
to be accurate.
Is there something that Robert can do now differently to avoid getting so far away?
I think he just has to try and wait and keep her contained a bit longer. She's actually sticking her head up and he's releasing her too quick. That's better.
Oh, spot on.
And you see she made a much better
made a
jump as well.
fantastic jump.
You know, so that was the best up to now, but practice.
Rob, you've got it now.
I think I'll give him a pound because it took him about 20 times to do it.
And the easier and more even the canter, and the good quality balanced canter coming to the fence, and presumably you've got a horse that you can make very easy adjustments either to move forward or to come back, then this means the easier it is. So really, I suppose that highlights the canter on the flat coming to the fence. There's very small adjustability to move a bit forward or to come a bit back to hit the right zone.
You've got to get the right place of takeoff with the least amount of interference. You know, so if the horse knows what he's doing, you don't have to interfere too much.
With your hands, with your
legs.
legs.
The horse is listening to the rider, and that's right.
Now here we see John riding the 6-year-old German bred stallion, and he's working through an exercise where we've got two fences 19 metres apart, and he's going to jump it in 4 even strides.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, John, how did that feel?
Yeah.
Quite even?
That was good. That was a perfect 4 strides for this horse. He's quite a big horse and he's got quite a big stride, but that was perfect 4 strides for him.
Okay, now of course the higher up you go in terms of the level of competition, the course builder doesn't always build even distances. So what happens when you get an uneven distance?
Well, say for example that's at the moment it's about 19 metres. So say if it was 20 or 21, you could either push on for 4 strides, but in this situation I would put 5 strides in because it's close to the end of the arena. So if you push for 4 strides, you're going to lose your control and lose your balance trying to turn around that corner. So in that situation I would try to do 5.
So you're going to do really what I was just doing with the bay horse, to sit up, push his hind legs underneath him to add the other extra stride. Okay, so
I'll do 5 strides. I'll jump the oxer there, sit up, shorten my stride and try and put 5.
Okay.
One, 2, 3, 4, 5.
So how do you feel about that?
That was also very good. I mean, this is where control comes into it and being able to shorten and lengthen. I approached the oxer a little bit slower to make it easier to put 5 strides in, but it came quite easy really, and he was listening to me and it was good.
And with the bay horse, I was actually taking quite extremely back on his hind legs to get him really short, but on the hind legs. I mean, how many strides could you get in to that?
I'm sure I can get 6 in there.
Well, let's have a look.
So you know, when you get in the same situation in the competition, you know, the more you can adapt, the more chance you have of jumping a clear round.
Well, how about if you get 6 strides in this time and then go around again and then go back to the original 4?
Yeah, okay.
So we can see that he can shorten and then he can lengthen again.
One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll try again.
But doesn't it highlight something that it's all too easy really to, okay, I know we're organising this, it's a false situation we're doing here, But you do see plenty of people coming to the fence actually using too much hand and killing the engine as a consequence of that.
Yeah, when you must have leg on at the same time as you pull, you must have leg on.
Yeah.
But I'm leaving it too late.
Yeah.
You have to land and then do it quicker.
Yeah. Okay.
So try to get 6 even strides instead of 2 big ones and 4 really short ones. That's what's happening.
So what you're saying is you've really got to sit up and do the organisation at the back of the
Sooner.
landing side of the first fence.
Yeah. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Oh, that was perfect. Okay, now for the forward 4 again.
One, 2, 3, 4.
That was very good. And that was great when you did your 6, that he didn't overreact to your hand.
No, that 6 was perfect that
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, you could do this sort of work like I was doing with the bay horse. You could do this work actually without any fences, couldn't you? Just between the letters.
Exactly, or even poles on the ground.
Poles on the ground, exactly, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good exercise.
Good. We need to be able to move our horse immediately forward and immediately back. But he must move forward without overreacting and rushing from the leg. And equally, when we ask him to come back and to shorten, he must do that without resisting in the mouth or throwing his head up and down and causing stiffness in his back. Here's an exercise to help you do that. Actually, let's remind ourselves of one of the earlier exercises, which is on the square. When we ride forward to the corner, sit up a little bit with our upper body, collect, bend, and then body a bit forward, use your hips and extend. Sit up, collect, and already the horse is starting to come back by my upper body sitting up and going forward with my hips. Now I'm going to do it without turning the corner. So he thinks I'm going to turn, brings himself back, and now I go forward again. So now I've really got the half halts coming into the horse, but half halts with the horse listening to my upper body rather than me having to use my hands the whole time. So now upper body back, gradually, comes back and collects on the spot, and now forward. Back, and now forward. These only need to be very small movements of your upper body, but the horse will be able to pick those up. And most importantly, you'll be able to use them in the middle of jumping exercises, related distances, and combinations. Now I'm going to count some strides between 2 markers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Next block I'm going to go in 4, starting now. 1, 2, 3, 4. So if you give yourself 2 markers and a series of them, you can count the strides in between and change them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. And again, this is an exercise you need to develop equally on both reins, and eventually you end up with a canter that is fully adjustable. You can move forward, you can move back, and although you have to use a little bit of wrist or fingers to bring the horse back, a little bit of leg, you don't need to use so much that it's going to distract the horse, disrupt the horse, and bring in problems you don't need. So John, the secret of jumping a course where you have to string a number of fences together is that you've got to rebalance your horse in between the fences and really after each fence, correct?
That's correct, and it helps if you can land on the right leg after each fence.
Okay, so let's do an exercise now where we teach the horse to land on the correct leg.
Okay.
All right, so John's going to make a circle to the left, come off the left rein and approach this vertical. And then as the horse leaves the ground while he's in the air, he's going to take his left leg back, turn his body a bit to the right and encourage the horse to land on the right canter. Now there you saw the horse actually landed in left canter, and a stride later he changed to the right. So should we try that again, John?
Yeah.
Very good, very good. I thought that was especially good because he didn't have the best of approaches,
No.
and yet, you know, he still came to it and concentrated and did it well. Should we just see if we can get the
Slow.
approach and the landing
Better.
sorted out? Yeah. That was very good.
Ooh.
Okay, John, he looked as if he was getting the hang of that really well.
Yep, yeah, I did. It was
Now,
good.
if you go to jump a course right now, we've got a little course set up. In reality, that doesn't always work, that under the sort of pressure of jumping a course, that he'll always land on the correct lead. So you're faced with a situation that the horse has landed on the wrong leg, and so what do you advise riders to do then?
I think for the less experienced riders or horses, that rather than try and ask them to do a flying change and it doesn't work, so you finish up going around disunited and you're on top of the next fence before you know where you are, just ask them to do a simple trot change from canter, trot, canter.
Okay.
And you know, rather than risk it going
Wrong.
Going
and then
really wrong.
later on, as they get better with the flying changes, to bring those
get
in.
more experience and
Yeah.
your flying changes are good, then I would ask them to.
Well, shall we just,
Change.
without offence, shall we just try, like each way, a change, canter,
Yeah.
trot, canter, and just see that he's understanding that? Good. Okay, so that time he actually came back through a walk, but you could keep practicing these till they come really slick and smooth. That was a bit quicker. Just give him one more. Good. All right, now shall we try to sort of organise it from a demonstration point of view?
Yeah.
That if you came round on the left canter, approach this in left canter, and then supposing you land in left canter, and then on landing make a quick change through the trot to the right.
Yeah. Ooh.
Good. Good. And presumably, you know, the more you practice that, the smoother and easier it gets,
And the quicker it gets.
the quicker
yeah.
it gets.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we've got a small course up here. With a novice horse, what are you aiming to do when you jump a course? From the flat work point of view, what are you hoping to
Well, we
achieve?
want nice control and balance and nice even strides between every fence and hopefully landing on the right legs every time.
Yeah.
Control and balance and on the right leg.
Good. All right. Well, so we string a few fences together.
Yep. Oh, oh, oh. Oh.
When it comes to teaching the horse flying changes, like almost everything we do, there are many different ways which are equally successful. But I'd like to show you a system that I find works pretty well with most horses. First of all, let's start off with the type of canter you need before you do a flying change. We need a collected canter that is active and engaged in the hind legs, and one that you can really control. Uphill canter with a supple neck, and we need to be able to make very good canter, walk canter transitions. First of all, start on a large circle, staying on the same leg. When you come to prepare for your walk transition, collect the horse, hind legs under, and walk, so that he doesn't do these transitions by falling flat on the forehand with no collection. So what we don't want is coming to the canter walk transition unbalanced like that and falling downhill like that. Even though it may feel quite smooth, it's not helping the horse's weight come back on his hind legs, so that his hind legs work like a spring to project him into the air. Now, when you've got these transitions working well on the circle, you can ride a serpentine line, changing from one canter to the other. So I'll demonstrate this from the end of the school. And with this particular serpentine line, I'm making sure that the line comes slightly back on myself. So I turn my body, go a little bit back, collect, walk. A little bit of hesitation there. So next time I'll be just ready to use a little bit more leg and less hand in the downward transition. Go slightly back and walk, that's better. Establish the walk and then canter. Coming back on myself, very carefully, prepare and walk. That's better, and canter. Now, the aids for the canter strike off are, when I want to go into right canter, take my left leg back and then I use my right leg on the girth. Now, I sit straight in the saddle and make sure that I don't twist or turn, because these are some of the faults that can easily happen when I start to do flying changes. Make sure I keep him forward, keep the walk forward but collected. Good. Now I'm going to finish this serpentine off, reducing the number of steps. So it's walk, canter. Now the preparation into those walk transitions was very important, because it's going to be the same preparation that I make when I come to do a flying change. So this time, turn, activate him, flying change. So the flying change now is an extension of the same exercise that I've been doing. Back, which helps collect, flying change. Exactly the same aid, no walk steps, but most important, bounce. Bounce the hind legs, and then he does it like that. Now, I'm just going to talk you through that in walk, but imagining that I'm in now left lead canter, coming across here, and I'm going to do a flying change. I turn, keep the line coming slightly back on myself, which helps the horse stay collected on his hind legs. He's looking a bit to the left. At this point, my right leg's behind the girth, where it should be anyway, to stop the horse's quarters falling out. Just before I want the flying change, 2 strides before, I'm going to use a little bit of this leg to just activate the hind legs and make sure they're listening. And for the flying change itself, I'm going to take my left leg a bit back, but I'm going to give, and this is the most important part, a small half hold. I'm not going to lean forward or twist or let the horse, his energy run through the front end. I'm going to keep his balance uphill with that half hold. If I miss the half hold or I don't do it correctly, then the horse will fall on the forehand and the flying change won't work. So let's canter towards you, working through that. Type of canter I want is short, bouncy canter, but controlled. I turn, right leg, activate, activate, half hold. And then what is very important is that after your flying change, you go exactly forward on your line. You go right to the edge of the arena. Never let a horse make a flying change and change direction. That's one of our golden rules. And that certainly happens with young horses. And we try to always keep the horses straight. So just working through that once again. Rather like when you're jumping, you approach the fence straight, you jump and you go straight on landing. Exactly the same thing with your flying change. Turn, activate, activate, and straight out before I let him turn. And I'll come towards you off the right rein and do exactly the same thing. In that particular, just before that flying change, the horse wanted to pull a little bit out of balance, and I didn't let him make the change till I was ready. So here, activate, activate, half hold, straight, and now turn. Okay, Robert, why don't you do a couple of flying changes so that I can have a look at them and we can see how they are.
Okay.
Okay, Robert, that's fine. Just come over here. Good. Now, I noticed that when you were coming this way, in the left canter to the right, she made a correct flying change. By that I mean that she changed all 4 legs exactly in the same moment of suspension. On every canter stride, the horse is in the air with all 4 legs for a very short time, and she changed absolutely in that moment of suspension. When she came this way round, from right to left, she changed her front leg first, and then in the next stride, her hind leg. And that's what we call being late behind in the flying change. And that happens quite a lot, and it can be that instead of her, where she was only 1 stride disunited, some horses go 2 or 3, 4 strides disunited. So let's see if we can correct that. And we'll try and correct that by bringing in a more balanced canter on this line. Come exactly on the same line, but just sit up and think about the balance of her so that you keep her withers coming up a little bit higher than the top of her quarters, her croup. And then when you give the aid, sit up and give a little bit of a flying change on the outside rein, the new outside rein, which will be your right hand because you're going to the left. What I don't want you to do is to lean forward and pull with the left hand just because you're going to the left, because that'll push her onto the forehand and she'll become late behind again. So sit up a little bit and prepare her for the change properly. Let's try again. Come from go around that white oxer, almost from E, because then you've got a sharper turn and that'll help keep her collected.
Right.
So not too much power, relax in the saddle, shorten your stride, Think of your right hand, shorten. Very good. Oh, that was spot on. All right, good. Give her a walk and a pat. So when you have a horse that makes a flying change only with the front legs and then later behind, the correction to that is to make sure that you really keep your horse in balance and more collected on a shorter stride, encouraging the horse's weight to stay back on the hind legs. And then you get the connection between the back legs and the front legs, and the horse changes at exactly the same moment of suspension. With this young horse, when John jumped the horse earlier, I noticed with his flying changes from left to right, they were nice and fluent and in a good balance. But from right to left, from right lead canter to left lead canter, just before the change, the horse pushed his hindquarters up in the air and correspondingly put his forehand down. So a little bit like the seesaw going up behind and down in front. So the horse was on the forehand before the flying change. So I'm going to run through an exercise to try to improve that. Part of the problem is that the horse is anticipating the flying change, but is anticipating it technically in the wrong way. So I'm going to use an exercise that I showed earlier, which is the counter canter on a large circle. And this means that I haven't got to do the flying change at any particular part or at the end of a diagonal. I can just keep going till the canter feels balanced enough and easy enough to do the change. So I'm going to strike off into counter canter, go on a circle, make sure the horse comes into the bit and that I can just get a better quality canter. That, he's already anticipating that change there and moving his quarters up, so I just rebalance him when he does that. And that's the advantage of this exercise, that you can keep working on the canter without letting him do the change. I need a slightly quicker hind leg. It's coming better in his neck now. You can see how I'm keeping my left leg back to keep him in right canter. No, he went up with his quarters there, and I stopped him from doing that with my left leg. Okay, and that flying change was correct. It was still a little bit high behind, but he allowed me to school his canter beforehand. And if I did that exercise several times, the horse would get much more relaxed, and instead of him anticipating the flying change by getting himself into a position where he's unbalanced, he was in fact allowing me to adjust the canter to put it in the right position to do the flying change. Listen to that. Okay, John, when it comes to jumping against the clock, well, quite frankly, there's nobody better at it than you. And can you give us some of your ideas about when you start jumping your horses against the clock and how you do it?
Yeah, I think first of all with young horses, they shouldn't go too much against the clock, although I do try and teach my horses to turn at, from a young age. They have to learn how to turn and
as in turning close to the
turn
fence.
short into a fence.
As opposed to actually really going fast.
And turning short after a fence, they have to learn how to do that without actually having to go fast. I think to go full speed in jump off with young horses is a bad thing.
Can spoil the jump a bit. Yeah.
It spoils the jump and their attitude, but they must learn how to turn from an early age. And
okay. So in terms of the flat work and the dressage exercises, what exercises do you do to ensure that they can turn easily?
Yeah, we do like you was doing earlier, we do the practice the turns on the flat.
The smaller circles.
Small circles, yeah. And teach the horse to do it without having to yank him round, so he with your body.
So as you turn, he follows you.
That's right.
Right, shall we have a look at you preparing this horse, say, to turn up into this fence then?
Yeah.
So you've collected his canter a bit, so he's keeping his weight more down on his quarters. Good. And during that turn, it was very noticeable how you kept the outside front leg of him turning round with your outside rein. Can you just give us an example of doing the same thing, how not to do it?
We need Jeff Billington for that.
He was too expensive, we can't afford him.
Ooh.
So basically what you were doing then was pulling on the inside rein, letting go of the outside rein, and leaning into your turns, motorbiking round. Right, I think you better repair him a bit now before we come to the fence. Good, so that's a more collected canter, and he was really carrying more weight on his hind legs then. Good. This is where you've got to really take care with your outside leg, haven't you? To bring that outside hind leg round.
And really try and sit up straight and use your body to
show him
keep
the
the horse
direction.
upright. And,
Yeah, keep him upright. Okay, how about trying it then in turning up into that green fence?
It's also important to look at the fence, really concentrate on it all the way around the turn. Ooh. Ooh.
Okay.
It's important to look at the fence and try and make the horse look at the fence.
To focus on the fence and keep this clear rhythm rather than sort of
balance
checking and pulling. Yeah. And what about the landing side of the fence when you're jumping off against the clock?
Yeah, well, it's going back a little bit to get the horse to land on the right leg for the direction you're going. But the most difficult turn is when you have to go, for example, jump the white fence, go past the fence and come back to it. That's the most difficult turn.
Yeah.
Ooh. Ooh.
Okay, now how did the turn work into the red oxer?
It actually worked very well, but now because we've been practicing, he's looking for it, he's looking where to go, and he's learned a lot the last 10 minutes.
Good, well, it's a good note to finish on then.
Very good, thank you.
It was very noticeable during that demonstration that John didn't pull the horse's front end round into the fence, but he guided the forehand round and very much controlled the hind legs, especially the outside hind leg. So I'd like to show you some exercises now that can help you perfect your turning. I'm going to start with some very precise and measured small circles. Before every small circle, I'm going to turn my upper body like that. So I always turn my upper body a couple of steps before the start of the small circle, and if I keep doing this, the horse eventually learns that the turning of the upper body means that he has to turn his forehand. I'm going to do it again over on the next long side. And when I turn my upper body, I've got to be very careful that I don't also turn my pelvis and put my seat to the outside. I want to turn my upper body without my pelvis, like that, and then 2 steps later the horse responds by turning. While I go away from you, I'm actually going to do it wrong by also turning my seat like that, and I slip to the outside, and that's what I've got to be really careful to avoid at all costs. So we're going to repeat that in the trot. Turn the upper body and the horse follows. Make them very precise, in this case exactly to the centre line and back. Weight to the inside so you sit central in the saddle. Turn the upper body and the horse follows. This means that I don't have to pull on the inside rein to take the horse around. And the next time I do it, in fact, I'm going to put my inside hand forward, give away the inside rein, so turn, give, and the horse follows. Give the inside rein, outside rein stays in contact. And then I'm going to repeat those in the canter. So prepare for the small circle. Turn, sit straight. And this time I can ride with my inside hand hanging down, which is going to stop me pulling the horse around. And if you practice these small circles, the reins in the outside hand, turning your upper body to teach the horse to turn, then he'll soften in his neck and follow you round. Good. Now this horse is doing the small circles well, but what happens when it doesn't go as smoothly as that? Well, basically, one of two things happens. Either the horse has got too much neck bend, like that, probably because the rider drops the contact on the outside rein and pulls across with the inside rein, and this results in the shoulders drifting off on their own line. And so although I intend to do a tight turn, the horse actually does a much wider turn because I haven't controlled his shoulders. Or the horse is stiff on that side, the rider pulls on the inside rein, and the quarters of the horse step to the outside. This results in lack of control of the quarters and lack of energy and spring on the hind legs as you approach your fence. Let me just give you a demonstration of those two. So the first one is where you have too much neck bend, seat goes to the outside, and although I'm wanting to come towards you now, the horse is actually going in the opposite way round. So I need to correct that by controlling the outside rein. Although he's bent to the inside rein becomes a bit lighter and I can guide him round like that. The second one was where the horse is stiff and won't bend. You pull on the inside rein and the quarters swing out like that. Now, if you have a horse that's stiff and won't flex at all, a very useful exercise is to go down the long side of your arena and very gently practice walking the horse in a straight line with your hands either side of the rein. Just use, in this case I'm going to teach the horse to flex to the right wrist, so he just flexes, not bends his neck in an exaggerated way, just flexes, and then my left rein to straighten him up. So it's a little bit like working a hinge that's a bit rusty. Flex, straighten. And when I do that, when I flex him, I'm being very careful that my outside leg's back and that his quarters don't come nearer the boards, or that when I flex him, his front legs don't come in. So I'm going to walk in a straight line, flex, turning my body, straight, flex and straight. And then we can practice that also in trot. So straight, flex, but go straight a little bit and straighten up. Flex, straight. And that only has to be a very small amount. And in the end, you end up with a horse that can just flex to the inside, but also control both his forehand and his hind legs. When we've got the horse flexing a little bit to the inside and responding to my upper body turning by him turning his front legs, we're ready to move on to a slightly more advanced exercise of shoulder in. This is where the horse brings his forehand to the inside, on the inside track, but keeps moving on a straight line. To help show this, I've taken off the white bandages from the left front leg and the right hind and put on black boots, as I want to line up his left front leg and right hind so I'm going at the correct angle. Start in walk, walk straight, small flexion to the right with my right wrist, and now bring his forehand in just like he did to start a small circle. But at this moment, use a little bit of inside leg, right leg, and nudge him down the track. The angle is very important. If I have too much angle like this, the horse stiffens and loses balance. So I reduce the angle back to just lining up the left front leg and the right hind. Now I'm going to repeat that in trot. The advantage to this exercise is it can really help you initiate the turn into your fence by having a horse that is able to look into the turn and yet turn his forehand. That's very difficult for many horses. They can turn, but by looking to the outside. Now, inside flexion, turn the forehand, and that's a nice consistent angle. And now I go straight and turn once again, and that could help really make the turns into the fences a lot easier. From the point of view of a more advanced exercise to help you jump off turns, we can move into canter and ride and practice riding in a collected canter, the small circles, small turns John was doing, and to train myself not to allow the quarters to go to the outside, I take my outside leg back a little bit and just ride the quarters a little bit in. And if you have a look at the effect of this, the horse is lifting his forehand and he's actually pirouetting around his hind leg. And that's the smallest circle that a horse can do. But the point about really controlling the quarters so that they lift the forehand is that it means that you arrive at the fence with the hind legs underneath and he's actually lifting and carrying his forehand as opposed to him being downhill on the forehand, which so often happens when you ride a jump-off turn. We hope the exercises that we've demonstrated will help you with your dressage, and that this program has made you more aware of the importance of dressage for jumping. Remember, always progress through your training exercises in a logical manner, starting with the easy ones. When things go wrong, as they will, it's rarely the horse's fault. It's simply that they don't understand. So be patient. And if you use a system of repetition and reward, these exercises will help you. They say that practice makes perfect, but I believe only perfect practice makes perfect. Good luck.